Selamat pagi Indonesia. IndoSec is back. My name is Sudhir Ranjan Jena. I am the Managing Director of TradePass. Welcome to IndoSec 2020 Live, Indonesia's largest virtual event on cybersecurity. COVID-19 has undoubtedly changed the world and tested the fundamentals of the modern economy. What will be the short-term and long-term scenarios for cybersecurity in Indonesia for the months to come? A two-day streamed virtual strategic and technical conference will take place today and tomorrow, that is 25th and 26th of August 2020, focusing on the theme Transforming Cybersecurity for a Safer Indonesia. The virtual conference has brought together CISOs, CIOs, CTOs, Senior Information Security, Risk, Data, Forensics, Compliance, Cyber Law, and law enforcement professionals from various public and private enterprises across Indonesia, and global leaders to assess the collective measures Indonesia is putting in place to fight against cybercrimes. IndoSec Live will provide the thought leadership that will frame the future of Indonesian cybersecurity landscape and connect global organizations to define new business models and strategies pertaining to the cyberspace. IndoSec 2020 Live will include keynote presentations, panel discussions, an interactive exhibition, virtual meet with the speaker breakout sessions, networking areas, and many more. The event has registered over 1,000 pre-qualified delegates, making it the largest virtual cybersecurity conference in the country. This conference is the right platform to virtually engage and network with other cybersecurity experts, including top solution providers who offer the latest cybersecurity technologies. Please watch the video till the end to know how you can navigate seamlessly and maximize your attendance on this too. I wish you a fantastic conference.
Hi and welcome to IndoSec 2020. A link along with a password will be sent to your registered email. Please ensure that you do not share this with anybody. Open the link in your Chrome browser. Put in your password. Now, you will virtually enter the conference venue. We will first tell you what you can do in the virtual lobby. On your left, you can see a board with options: Conference Hall, Exhibition Hall, Help Desk, Agenda, Rewards, and Event Guidelines. Click on the Conference Hall to enter the Conference Hall. Click on Exhibition Hall to enter the exhibiting area. Click on the Help Desk for any questions or queries you may have during the event. Click on the agenda to view the list of topics along with the lineup of speakers. This will help you plan your day better. Click on Rewards to understand how you could win points and walk away with exciting e-vouchers. Click on Event Guidelines to get more information on the usage of the virtual tool. Let's move to the right side corner of your screen. Click on Quick Chat to view the list of delegates, to get their information, and to chat and network. Now let's move to the Help Desk. If you have any questions during the event, click on the Help Desk and ask away. Team TradePass is here to answer all your questions at the TradePass booth. Now let's click on the lobby icon to get back to the lobby. Now let's go to the conference hall where you can view interesting presentations and panel discussions. Click on the conference hall. Now let's click on Click to enter auditorium. Click on Join as audience. Now you can view all the speakers and presentations. As an audience, you have three options: chat, Q&A, and poll. Click on chat to chat with the speakers and other delegates during the sessions. Click on Q&A to ask any questions you may have during the sessions. Click on poll to vote on certain questions that may be asked. Now let's go back to the lobby area. It's time to visit the exhibiting hall. Click on Exhibiting Hall. Here you will see some of the top cybersecurity solution providers. Click on the booth to enter. Once you are in the booth, there are many activities that you can do. Click on Brochure to get more information about the products and services. Click on Video to view interesting product videos. Click on May I help you if you have any questions or need any assistance. Click on Quick Chat. Click on Video Chat to have a video or audio conversation with the exhibitor. You can download brochures, videos, and business cards during the course of the event. You can view all these in My Event bag under your profile. We hope you have a wonderful and insightful experience at IndoSec 2020.
AWS and Azure, and really, how popular they've become. But we're going to dig in deep as far as, being able to acquire the analysis from those environments as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and we'll just do quick introductions here. So my name's Trey Amick, Manager of Forensic Consultants here at Magnet. I joined Magnet just around 2 years ago. My background is a little varied and coming from both law enforcement as well as corporate investigations, spending time doing insider threat and education and awareness as well. And then previously worked at Apple and did some intelligence work overseas. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Feel free to add me on social media, my email address. Happy to answer any questions that y'all might have or if y'all ever need anything. But with that, I'll let Curtis introduce himself as well.
Yeah, thanks, Trey. I joined Axiom a couple years ago as well. I've been doing kind of product management across a variety of industries for about 10 years now. So still lots to learn in this space. I've really enjoyed some of the sessions over the past couple of days. It's been a great learning opportunity for myself as I continue to sort of expand my knowledge in this space and look forward to presenting here.
Excellent. So moving right along. So today's agenda, obviously we've got a short window, but we're going to try and cram as much information into it as possible. But today we're going to get started by highlighting some of the trends of cloud data and how investigations are being impacted. Many organizations have already migrated to either, hybrid environments of being both, in the cloud as well as on-prem. But we're, going to also look into, how we're reviewing two of AWS's, most used services, EC2 and S3. Curtis is then going to walk through how Axiom Cyber can assist in some of these investigations that rely on collection and analysis of data from the cloud. And then lastly, we're going to wrap up by discussing forensicating in the cloud, both with automation and orchestration. So that's kind of our presentation today in a nutshell. So that being said, we're going to kind of move right along here into some of the trends that we're talking about. And 1 in 5 organizations are going to lose more than $1 million a year to fraud. And when we're talking about cyber crimes, it's important to recognize the real costs that are incurred by organizations due to these attacks. IBM actually put together an in-depth study on the cost last year, and like I said, found 1 in 5 organizations losing $1 million to fraudulent activity. The average cost then breaking down of a data breach was calculated at nearly $4 million. And really, in my opinion, I can only see that doing nothing but going up from there. So definitely something that we need to be aware of. And as investigators, we play a little part as far as being able to do the exams at the end and being able to have that root cause analysis breakdown so that we can, fix these issues. But definitely something, just to kind of level set with where we're at in the organization right now. Whoops. So when we're talking about, why we picked AWS, why we're going to start with this, conversation, obviously AWS and Azure really make up 50% of the cloud. There are a ton of other, cloud environments, whether it be Salesforce or Oracle, but really AWS and Azure are kind of the backbones. And with AWS and Azure making up that bulk of the public cloud sector, it's imperative that forensic, examiners have means of completing investigations when those needs arise. With revenue targets, set to exceed $100 billion this year, and the market doubling in size in the last 3 years, cloud investigations are definitely here to stay. So as mentioned before, many companies have already gone to hybrid environments or are fully in the cloud, but we've got companies like Adobe and Airbnb and Slack and Netflix that are really relying heavily on the AWS infrastructure, for their operational needs. So definitely, as investigators, we need to continue growing to support the needs of all these businesses. So we're going to start off with just high level with AWS, kind of a quick review, because obviously not every organization, is fully adopted, cloud environments yet. So we're going to kind of start high and then start digging in from there. With that, let's talk about the infrastructure of AWS. Obviously, it's broken down. We have regions, we have availability zones. There's a lot of redundancy, which is fantastic, and one of the reasons many people do switch to the cloud environment. But our focus today is going to be on the services that are residing outside your walls. We've seen massive amounts of adoption with cloud applications, to support nearly every facet of our day-to-day lives. As I mentioned earlier, like with Netflix or Twitter. And, a lot of these applications can hold enormous amounts of data that can be really relevant to our investigations. So we need to, understand how we can work within these environments to grab that data. All data flowing across the AWS global network interconnects at data centers and regions and is automatically encrypted at the physical layer before it leaves those secured facilities. Organizations can build on that secure global infrastructure. However, we know too well when we have mishaps, like misconfigured firewalls or that data that's not properly being secured, what happens. We have breaches that happen, and as did with Capital One, last year with 100 million records being stolen just based on something very easy in terms of just that misconfigured firewall. So that's really where having tools and technology can help expedite your analysis, can really benefit for organizations. Next, let's talk a little bit about the AWS security, since I kind of already mentioned it before. Very similar to NIST framework of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. AWS security is risk-based, so it allows for organizations to determine the appropriate level of cybersecurity for their individual risk assessments and requirements, and really their business objectives. As many of you are aware, there are quite a few of AWS services kind of listed on the right-hand side of the screen here that really help secure and protect your data in the cloud. Things like AWS Shield or AWS CloudTrail as well. So definitely, areas that we all as investigators need to learn a little bit more about as we are doing more and more investigations in cloud environments. Next, we have the AWS shared responsibility model. And, I like how this is broken down as far as we have the customer responsibilities and then what AWS's responsibilities are when it comes to cloud environments. So let's kind of break this down. As mentioned before, that the customer data with the client side data encryption is left up to the organizations using AWS. It's up to our organization's cloud engineers to then secure our services, while AWS is more responsible for the infrastructure of the cloud, ranging from data protection with the data at rest to, the fundamental services it's offering, their customers, like the computing power of EC2 instances, and storage with S3 buckets. So I really, like I said, like the breakdown of this, leaving AWS to respond, to their regions and their availability zones and how their networks are, working versus, the customer's responsibility where it comes to protecting their customer data and the client side data encryption. So let's start looking at some of these services a little more closely. So we have the AWS S3 buckets, and this is just a very simple overview here. But essentially, when we are talking about S3 buckets, just think of it as a bucket that you can literally put any sort of object into. Objects can be any type of data. Structured data files, like your databases, or unstructured data like logs, text files, photos, videos. Or we can have, a cross of, semi structured data such as JSON or XML files. When creating new buckets, it's important to remember though that a new bucket is actually set to private by default, and then bucket policies need to be applied to provide access to those objects. S3 allows each bucket to be up to 5 terabytes, and to facilitate faster upload of some of those larger files, multi-part uploads options is an option for us. And once again, we need to be able to collect the contents of those S3 buckets for our investigations, and that's pretty critical, especially when I mentioned logs. A lot of our organizations have log files that are just constantly being dumped into S3 buckets, and we really need to be able to investigate those thoroughly and quickly with the tools at hand here. When we're talking down here at the bottom of the slide, where we're talking more about S3 Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive, that's going to be for the long-term storage, at a lower cost. The Glacier service has archives that can be a single file or a set of files up to about 40 terabytes in size, and archives are stored in vaults on Glacier. Vaults can be applied to data handling retention as well as locks, so that that data can't be edited as well while it's sitting inside of a Glacier or Glacier Deep archive. For investigators who need to actually investigate data that's being held in one of these vaults that's on Glacier, when retrieving that data, the copy of that data is actually made available on S3, while the actual information that's on Glacier is still resides there. So it's essentially kind of duplicating that when people need to move data out of that archive. Next, let's talk very quickly about EC2 instances. So now EC2 instances really are providing, the computing power for organizations who need to scale operation, from apps to web servers to, code repositories, at a whim. And this is fantastic, and why a lot of people and organizations go to using cloud environments, because they have that flexibility. So the virtual computing environments, known as instances, have pre-configured templates known as Amazon machine images, or AMIs, and that's everything the organization needs to stand up servers, including both the hardware as well as operating systems and additional software that goes into that. And like I said, a big feature of the EC2 instances is really that ability to scale as needed. After Curtis reviews how Axiom Cyber can acquire and process both S3 buckets and EC2 instances with Axiom Cyber, we're going to take a look at how labs can automate and orchestrate and process evidence in the cloud environments to really maximize the benefits that are offered from AWS. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Curtis so we can start talking about Axiom Cyber a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Trey. So as Trey mentioned, earlier this year, Magnet introduced Axiom Cyber, and this is really designed to be an all-in-one digital forensics platform providing local and remote collection and analysis of data from both physical devices as well as cloud services. Axiom allows you to collect all of the digital evidence related to your case into a single workspace, so you can get that really comprehensive view of the incident, the parties involved across all of the devices that were involved as we go along. Our focus today is going to be a little bit more around some of those services that reside outside of your walls. So we've seen this massive adoption of cloud applications to support us in nearly every facet of our work. That might be Office 365. We're using Zoom for these sessions today. There's so many of these services we just leverage on a day-to-day basis. And Axiom supports many of these top business platforms, and provides access to this information and collecting information from these services in a variety of ways, including the ability to collect data from Office 365, G Suite, Box.com, all by using administrative level credentials to perform targeted acquisition on specific employee data, the ability to acquire data from AWS and Azure that we're going to dive into in a little bit more detail. We also look at some of the different communication platforms that are being leveraged today, including Teams and Slack, and even diving into social media, where that can be very important to your business and what's being said about your organization. So being able to collect information from those platforms can be critical as well. Another key component to Axiom Cyber is our ability to do covert remote collection. So this was a new feature that was included as a part of our Axiom Cyber package and allows you to remotely collect individual files, locations, or even the full disk from a remote device. This system also includes the ability to collect information from Macs. And we built in some intelligence to automatically reconnect if the endpoint goes offline. So really, we want to be able to cover all of these different types of collection methodologies as we go along. So let's have a look at how this actually is facilitated by Axiom Cyber. So the first thing you're going to do when you set up a brand new case is you're going to load in the different evidence types. And you can see here, you get a few different options. So Axiom Cyber, again, is really intended to collect from any type of evidence that may be related to the case you're investigating. So more traditionally, we would have been talking about a local computer or a hard drive image, a mobile device. But as we've kind of evolved and the evidence is moving towards the cloud, or we need to collect from remote systems, we've really built out options around cloud collection and remote computers. So I'm going to drill down a little further, and as we choose our cloud data source, you're presented with a couple different options. We have this ability to acquire evidence, and when we think of acquiring, that's really live collection. So this is where we're going to go out to the different service and collect information directly from that service provider. But we also have the ability to load information. So oftentimes, depending on the service you're working with, you can access information through different means. A good example of this would be Google Takeout. So if you need to get access to your own Google information, you can actually do a takeout that generates a package of your data, and that information can be loaded in here. So that's great if you've got a victim or a witness who's participating in your investigation. They want to provide some information but don't want to hand over their credentials to their Google account. This is a great way for them to generate that data package and provide it to you. For those of you in law enforcement, this would include warrant return packages. So if you've provided a warrant to these vendors and they've provided a package of information, often sifting through that can be incredibly difficult and time consuming. We've integrated the ability to process packages returned by Apple, Google, Snapchat, Instagram, and Skype. And we're continuing to build out support for these services. Again, just to help simplify and accelerate the investigations of these, all from these different cloud vendors. And for those of you working more in a corporate space, there are certain tools. A great example would be Slack, where they have a compliance export from their system. This is one of the methods that you can actually access information out of your Slack environment. So we can take that package and process that into Axiom for investigation. And we've also recently added the ability to process Office 365 unified audit logs. So there's a lot of great information there that can be leveraged. But we're gonna, again, today we're gonna focus a little bit more on our live acquisition. And you can see when you choose live acquisition, there are a whole host of services, including Office 365, Teams, Box.com, Dropbox, G Suite, and the ones we're gonna focus on today, Amazon, AWS, and Azure. So we're gonna start with are looking at AWS, and once you've authenticated in, and I'll come back to that in a couple minutes, you've got a couple different options. You can choose to acquire from an S3 bucket, or you can choose to acquire an EC2 instance. We're going to start looking at the S3 buckets. So when you've configured your environment, you likely don't want to configure or collect every S3 bucket in your organization. It could be a huge amount of data. There's a good reason you've stored this information in the cloud. It allows you to scale to nearly infinite size and near infinite number of buckets. So we want this to be a little bit more targeted. So what we actually allow you to do as a user is to selectively choose which information from which bucket you have access to. So you may need it at a high level. You may be very targeted in your acquisition and just choosing specific files. These could be logs. This could be other information that's stored in that S3 bucket. But we want to make sure you kind of have that choice as you're doing the selection. If you go the other route and you want to look at EC2 instances, there is some configuration that needs to happen, and this applies to both the S3 bucket and EC2. Luckily, accessing AWS is not as simple as just providing username and password. They put a lot of work into security, which is great and makes sense, but it does require some additional configuration in order to allow tools like Axiom to collect information from these environments. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the details, but what I have provided here are a couple links to our knowledge base. This is available directly from the Magnet Forensics website. And these articles would walk you through what needs to be configured, how you need to set up the roles in your environment in order to access your S3 buckets or your EC2 instances. And this is really critical because it would allow your administrator to be very specific as to what they're allowing access to. It doesn't have to open up your entire environment. You can be very targeted with this type of acquisition, again, without opening up any additional security holes that you would be concerned about as you're going along. So once you've authenticated in for EC2, Again, you're going to be presented with a list of the images or the devices, the EC2 instances that are running within your environment and that you have access to. We'll give you a list of what virtual machines are available to download. There are some limitations as to what Amazon actually allows to be exported from their system. So I've got a link a little bit later on that we can share. But anything that is available for download, we will provide a link to here. And then once you move on past the selected image, there is a little bit more configuration that needs to be done. So you're going to provide a description. You get to choose the image format. So it supports either acquiring it as a VHD or VMDK image. And you'll see here, you also need to provide at least, you'd have to have access to one S3 bucket. So AWS doesn't allow you to directly acquire snapshots from its virtual images. Instead, the process is that snapshot will be created and stored in an S3 bucket from the EC2 instance, and then we will acquire it from that S3 bucket. Now, depending on what you need for your investigation, you can either leave that snapshot sitting in S3. If you need it, if you just want to retain it there, you can. If not, we can automatically delete it just so you're not taking up more storage space within your S3 environment. But you do need to have access set up to at least one bucket to kind of serve as temporary storage for that image. So once you've got that configured, you can begin the download, and you're going to see there's definitely some considerations as you're thinking about incorporating a tool like this. S3 includes many different tiers and storage types for different information. So we currently do not support S3 Glacier and Glacier Deep archives. We will allow you to access the other types of S3 buckets. I touched on the fact that you need to have at least one S3 bucket available if you're going to acquire an EC2 instance. So this is going to be pretty critical. And Axiom supports the acquisition of Amazon Linux and Ubuntu server SSD volume types. This is a limitation on the AWS side. There's a link to a document here that gives you a little bit more information on the types of exports that are allowed through AWS. So they don't necessarily allow every image type to be downloaded. So this is important to recognize as well. And then there's a little bit of information on role configuration. This is covered again in the knowledge base articles that I linked to earlier, and provides just a little bit more background on how you would have to configure your environment in order to provide access to these things.
And one thing I just want to call out, when you mentioned technically Axiom Cyber doesn't support Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive right now, like I mentioned earlier, you're probably going to have to move that to a standard S3 bucket anyways, and leave that data residing there because it's going to be in a vault inside of Glacier. So once you have that moved, obviously, then you could, use Axiom to pull that on down.
Yep, thanks, Trey. Great point. So just want to spend another quick minute just touching on Azure. This is actually a relatively new feature that we've just added to Axiom Cyber. Very similar to the way we acquire EC2 instances. Once you've selected it, you're going to have to authenticate in. And again, just like AWS, your Azure environment has some specific configuration needs that are going to need to be looked after. Without diving into too many details, there is a link to our knowledge base article. The reason we keep this in the knowledge base is as our organization learns more about these and we hear more from you about different configurations, we can continue to evolve how we access these and the types of configurations that we can support. So always check back to those blogs. They're going to always be sort of the best source of the truth for how you're going to access and configure your environment. So once you've authenticated into your Azure environment, very similar to what you would have with EC2, you're going to select the image. You can see here, you'll get a presentation of which instances are available for download. You get a sense of the size, so you have to make sure you've got enough local storage in order to acquire and process this. We do at this time only support acquiring a single image at a time. That doesn't mean that you can't have multiple images in the same case. It just means you have to add evidence into, one at a time to your case rather than kind of doing them at the same time. So yeah, this is going to work very similar. It's going to download as a virtual hard drive image that will then be processed by Axiom for examination. And there are, again, a few considerations. So I touched on a few of these as we were going through, that only VMs can be selected for download. You can only choose one at a time. Similar again to AWS, you can choose to discard the image once it's been downloaded, so you're not taking up additional storage. And then we will process that image for any of the artifacts. So once we've acquired these, this is where we get into the examination portion. So we leverage Magnet Examine or Axiom Examine in order to do your analysis of these images. Each of the devices or buckets that you've acquired is going to be loaded in as a separate evidence item. So what we're showing here is kind of our case dashboard, and this is just going to give you a breakdown of the types of evidence that was found. Here you can see we found a host of documents, some emails, and as we drill into that information, Axiom is really designed as an artifact first tool. So you can see along the left side of the screen, you're going to see all of the different types of artifacts that were found. And this is where you can really drill into the evidence through advanced search capabilities, filtering, to really narrow down the scope of your investigation and drill into what you're looking for. Here you can tag, you can comment on any of the evidence items, and you can generate reports from the system then out to other stakeholders to really help establish that root cause analysis, for instance. For the incident. We also have a full file system navigator included. So if you need to drill down into the file system, we will maintain the structure of that instance. So you'll see here, we're actually looking at the partition directly from the virtual machine, and we can drill into that file system to easily locate specific files. Again, full search and filtering capabilities are available here to really help you get to what you're looking for. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Trey, and you can.
Awesome, thank you. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, and like I mentioned earlier, a lot of organizations, store logs from a variety of sources in S3 buckets, for use in log aggregators such as Splunk or other endpoint behavioral analysis tools. As a technical investigator, I would receive alerts all the time from our CSUC on, potential misuse of company endpoints, based on, for instance, Blue Code with proxy alerting, which detected, website content on things, such as gambling or, weapons, things that we had kind of set up as red flags. I had to validate these hits by remotely capturing the data from those endpoints and confirming the hits based on the complaints before kind of moving that case along to the stakeholders. So just something I wanted to highlight very, very quickly, especially because a lot of these logs are being saved in the cloud environments. If you're able to capture those logs and pull those down, so for instance, with Blue Code, you can create custom artifacts very, very quickly to then have that added into your case file just alongside your EC2 instances or their endpoints to validate those hits. So definitely check out, for this, I actually utilize Magnet's newly released free tool, the Magnet Custom Artifact Generator, and just created a quick parser that would allow Axiom to ingest that log file that I pulled down from an S3 bucket that now I can build connections off of, and that I can create a quick report to show how everything moved across that case very, very quickly. So definitely, if you haven't checked it out, grab the Magnet Custom Artifact Generator from our website. You can load in CSV files, delimited files, text files, or SQLite databases, to create these custom artifacts very, very easy to be able to do your analysis inside the tool. So just wanted to highlight that very quickly, just because I know, always dealing with logs, that's something that is pretty critical. Now, I want to talk a little bit about automation and orchestration with AWS. And this is something that obviously is coming up more and more for a lot of organizations. And, it's something that people are thinking about, how can they scale their labs to really keep up with the amount of data that we're collecting on any given day. So with that, I want to just mention Magnet Automate. So let's start with, what Automate is. And it's an orchestration and automation platform that uses your lab's existing hardware and software tools to create standard workflows and to image and process data without the examiner's intervention. Really quickly, I want to highlight how we can utilize, a tool like Automate to build workflows to, allow us to forensicate in cloud environments very, very easily. So that being said, let me get to the next slide. There we go. So building workflows allows organizations to have repeated steps for their investigations, and this is critical when you're dealing with legal or you're taking your cases to court. This is going to be something that you want to be able to show that you have the same workflow and that you did the same steps every time. And with Magna Automate, these workflows are quickly designed using just a drag and drop interface. Pretty fun to kind of get creative on how you want to build out these workflows. But at Magna, we're all about the toolbox approach. With Automate, organizations can easily orchestrate workflows from various tools that they have CLI access for, or if they've made scripts of their own, you can absolutely load those in as part of your workflows. So something just to keep in mind. Now, why does this tie in, or how does this tie into AWS or cloud environments here? So being able to parallel process and getting more out of your existing hardware, or being able to scale when you need to for your investigations. And Automate can leverage both hardware assets that are on-prem as well as virtual, as well as cloud or hybrid environments where maybe you want to utilize some of your assets that are on-prem, but you also want to be able to spin up AWS nodes to be able to process that as well. Examiners can queue tasks from multiple servers and just leave them to run overnight, eliminating the need to wait around for each process to complete, or doing them one at a time. So essentially what you're seeing here, we have one node that has orchestration and the workflows built out with the Automate dashboard, and then the rest of the nodes or endpoints are running Axiom Cyber scripts, being able to run different pieces of software all within that environment, so that everything is orchestrated, everything is being processed, and you're not having to wait for one piece of evidence to be processed before moving it on to the next. So definitely really, really cool technology. And when you're leveraging tools like AWS, that can be extremely powerful. Some of the results that we've been hearing from customers about how quickly they've been able to really move their cases along is pretty awesome. Lastly, we just released Automate 2.2 a couple weeks ago, and one thing that was really big with 2.2 were watch folders, which allows you to integrate essentially any acquisition tool within the workflows, even if they don't have a command line interface. So using the new watch folder capabilities, cases seamlessly can flow from post image acquisition through to processing with no downtime, improving the overall efficiencies of your lab. Essentially, Automate will watch a folder, and when an image hits that folder, it will continue watching it to see that image size grow. And once it stops growing, that's when we will kick off the workflows to go ahead and start processing in your other tools. And when you have configured AWS to be a part of this solution and are able to scale your lab very, very easily without having to buy expensive hardware at 10 or 15 grand per computer, this makes this super powerful with combining Automate in with the rest of your technology. So with that, thank you all for joining us today.